Welcome back.
I'm Panda.
And I'm Kat.
And we're the
Venture Vixens.
Today we're going to start our first resource video. It's on Anki. Anki is the flashcard service that we use to study our Japanese and anything else we need to study. It is based in SRS learning,
which is a spaced repetition.
And that basically breaks down your cards into new cards you have to learn and then cards you need to review or cards you're in the process of reviewing. It then breaks out the cards that you know based on how well you know it.
Right, so basically you make a choice at the bottom when you're working on a flashcard that determines what the next time you're going to see that card is. So if you know one really well, you want to put that card out farther. So for example, this deck shows an example sentence at the top, and then it has room for a picture, and then two audio files below. One is a female voice and one's a male voice. So it's a nice way to get everything you want into one kind of deck.
So how I like to study Anki is I like to go through my reviews first because it makes me feel accomplished, because that's a must do every day. And then once I've gotten that down to a really small number, like I'm talking in the tens or teens, then I'll start doing the new cards that are in the deck and just try and work on the cards that were the hardest for me and the new cards.
So I agree with Pichan. I also do my reviews first, though I'm not quite sure what she means by getting it down into the
Well, there's
teens
always
or
a
less.
couple of cards that are really hard for me because either they were like really old and I didn't know them, or I thought I knew them yesterday because they were the last three cards that I had, so it could have only been three options, and it wasn't really learning anything at that point. It was just memorization. And so something like that, those will be like the cards that I still have the next day that are still hard for me to learn.
I see what you're saying.
Mix them into the new cards.
I get that. I get mine down to 0 every day, so I don't have leftover numbers.
I don't mean leftovers.
But because I have so many for reviews, because I have upwards to 100 in each of my 4 decks that I do, will be sprinkled throughout those hundreds, so it's not like they end up at the very end and I do them. And then tackling the new ones, which I also agree is the best approach. The way that I do my cards is typically I will read out what is on the card first to myself, and then I will look to see if I'm right by clicking on the card. If I'm right, then I will probably read it again just to cement in pronunciation, or if I think I'm wrong with pronunciation, I might listen to the audio file and then repeat after it, and then move on accordingly. So depending on how well I know it, I will either choose whatever the green button is, because that's usually the good one, or maybe if it was harder for me, I would choose the yellow one.
Things I do differently, though, is because I'm still learning the English translation for the kanji, I don't say that out loud unless I'm really trying to hold myself accountable, which some days I need to, and some days I don't, so I don't always say that out loud. But otherwise, I'll just kind of hold the word in my mind and see if I was right or like I was close enough to right.
I think that makes sense. I think she makes it harder for herself every day.
I don't intentionally make it hard for myself.
She does.
I might intentionally make it hard for myself.
Either way, we do also suggest this method. I think getting through the reviews first is always more important than getting to new ones, because if you don't review those, then they just pile up, and then you might have 1,000 cards to review in a day.
Yeah, it can get really, really daunting if that number just is really big, because it does do a nice little alert button with how many undone cards you have to do that day.
Yeah.
So
as we said, this is the app that is on the phone, but Anki also comes in 2 other formats, which is the web and desktop. So we just prefer this one because it's easier. We always have our phones on us, so it's
easy to study on the go.
Yeah.
In the few minutes that you have when you're taking a break from something else that you have to do, it's nice to be able to just go through a couple of cards, take a 10-minute break, get through as many cards as you can, things like that. Unfortunately, the app does cost money, whereas the web version and the desktop app do not. It's about $20 or so, but we have found it to be well worth the investment to just have that convenience of being able to study on our phones at any time, at any place. One really great thing for all you nerds out there is you can really see your own statistics. You can track your progress, you can see what the forecast is like, you can see how your reviews are going.
Yeah, it breaks down how many cards you've studied in a day, how long it took you, basically how many cards you have left to go out of the total, so you can look at it percentage-wise. At the bottom especially, there's a good pie graph that visually shows you how much more you need to tackle till you completely understand the deck you're studying.
Or better yet, how many cards you've mastered. So this is a different type of flashcard deck that Kat is studying.
Yes, an example of just kanji, and this one shows you can do brushstroke, also provide notes at the bottom if there's things you want to tell yourself. So in addition, there's more customization you can do. You can turn this to night mode, for instance, if you prefer to not have a white background when you're studying. And then it shows some other features which I feel like are all more easily customizable on the desktop version than within the app itself,
which we will show you
here in a second.
One thing we do recommend is to synchronize every single time you study. This way, your cards will be uploaded or downloaded so that no matter which platform you use, they will all report the same thing. And you don't lose any progress if you, for some reason, forget to sync.
Now, this is especially important if you do tend to go back and forth between formats. For us, we tend to stay mostly on our phone, but at that time when you do want to go customize something, and if you've not uploaded, you can lose all of your progress.
It's sad. Don't do that. Sync all the time. So here we have the desktop app, and it always starts off with synchronizing, which is really nice, so it auto-syncs when you open and close the desktop app. This is kind of what it looks like for layout, and you can add cards really quickly to any deck just from that. But this is when you go through browse, you can see each of your decks, what the cards are, when they're supposed to come up, and then what are all of the different fields that you will see when you scroll through a certain card. And that can be so many fields or so few fields, as you'll see here in a second.
It really depends on what card type you chose when you first created the deck, and or what card type was chosen if you got a shared deck from the web.
We'll show you the shared decks webpage here in a second. When you're in these fields, you can alter anything from either the individual card, or you can hit Command A and change it for all the cards. This means you can fix a typo, even fix a card that isn't working for you, change a sentence, pretty much anything. Go through and look at all of your statistics here as well and see how you're doing.
I think it's a good way to figure out if you have a goal in mind. So for us, like trying to get to the December exam, how many cards we still have to accomplish before then, so you can break it down, divide it out, see how many you need to do per day.
So this is a quick way to get to the decks online that you can download, or look through ones that you've already downloaded to see if there are any updates or changes.
If you look at the way the Get Shared decks are shown, it actually shows you in this view what fields that are going to be available there, so you can actually know before you download a deck if it's something that has too many fields. If it has example sentences, maybe you're looking for something in particular. For Japanese, for instance, maybe you want to know whether it has the Ana-kun readings available for kanji. So it's a good way to see a preview beforehand.
You can also look through your own decks online. So if you, for some reason, don't have access to your computer with the desktop app, or your phone doesn't have the app, you can do your studying on the web. This Get Shared Decks section, you can scroll through all of the decks that people have made public. You can see their title, their rating, how many cards they have, whether they have audio files, whether they have picture files. Pretty much you can search for anything you're interested in and finding. And though we click the quick search button here, you can do a custom search for anything you'd like a Mina no Nihongo or Heisig deck. So say, for example, I thought this was one I wanted to download. I would just hit this button. It would go to my downloads, and then I can open it up in Anki and synchronize so that it is on my phone, or on my desktop, and on my web. So here's that deck we just downloaded. I'll now go and check it out in the Browse tab and take a quick look at the deck. And finally, I'm going to synchronize, so this will be available on my phone as through the app as well.
So make sure to hit that synchronize button.
Absolutely, hit the synchronize button every single time. Until next time.
Bye all you VVs
and Riris.
Bye!